Hello, everyone. This is Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Welcome to This Week in Bitcoin. Today is November the 15th, 2019. Strong hand. Bitcoin is the next Bitcoin. In motion. These guys are in motion. Whoa. One Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin. Offended by selling. Unconfiscatable. These two dudes, they've got conviction. We've all got conviction. Hello, my elite friends. We've got you some elite guests. They haven't been on the show before, but they got some deep Venezuelan connections. And you know what? In the Bitcoin space, everyone tries to talk about what's going on in Venezuela, but it's like all third-hand type of stuff. These guys, they're down with it. Okay, we got Mauricio of Ledn. He is in Toronto this second, but he grew up in Venezuela. And we've got Javier Bastardo here. He's in the belly of the beast in Caracas right now. Oh man, welcome to the show, guys. This is going to be a great This Week in Bitcoin. We're going to talk about Bitcoin, all sorts of stuff, and Venezuela. So let's start it off with like what's going on with Venezuela. I'm going to start with a quote from Mauricio from a tweet of his. Now, these guys are linked to below. Follow them on Twitter. They got some insight. I can't believe what I am seeing. Maduro talks for 1 hour about how he wants to turn Venezuela into a crypto powerhouse, touting grants and credits to crypto entrepreneurs using his Petro scheme. Dystopia is here. Okay, Javier, does the Petro actually exist? What's going on down there?
Well, hello, Adam. Thanks for having me here. Yeah. The Petro actually exists, but not like, like Bitcoin, not like that kind of existence, more like a tool, more a dystopian tool and government tool to control us. So, yeah, it exists, but is a little pain.
What's it built on top of? Or obviously it's centralized and it's there to keep track of you. I mean, do you have it in your possession? Actually, have you actually played around with it at all?
Oh, personally, I don't have any Petro, so the approach that I have is because some friends of mine have a little portion of Petro, so I can know how they are using it, like they're receiving as government bonuses. So it's a little weird to have Petros. You can buy it in national exchange, but we don't know those fellas. The CEO of those exchange don't show their face in public, and so
Can you use the Petro to buy real things? Can you actually, is it used as a medium of exchange?
yes. And in this point, many things could be used as a medium of exchange. So we have the hot potato with the Bolivar, and now we have a crypto hot potato with the Petro, and maybe they will force us to use it. But mm, to be a medium of exchange isn't enough to be named as a cryptocurrency, and this is just a tool to control the economy of the country, to control in a more powerful or more sophisticated way over us.
Yeah, but the one thing I try to look at things in a positive light, and you just said the word sophistication. If people learn how to use this thing, to use this Petro, it'll get them one step closer to Bitcoin, right?
Yes, and as a Bitcoin believer, I think that if people get familiar with the use of the Petro and with wallets, with exchange platforms, maybe is a new way to get in touch with Bitcoin because it's the original one, and I don't think that many people that will face that Petro is for control, that Petro is centralized, will keep the Petro as the main crypto asset.
Now
Will
one. Oh, sorry. Continue.
we will be working or transiting or moving to Bitcoin in a while. I don't think that the people will keep the Petro as the main crypto asset here, as we don't do it neither with the Bolivar, no?
Is it worth more than a Bolivar, a Petro?
Yes, a Petro worth like 660 US dollars.
Then if this is if then isn't this keeping Maduro in power longer? He's able to print his own cryptocurrency. That's
Yeah,
extending. Yeah,
yes, exactly,
so it's
exactly.
working. It's working. What he's unbelievable. This is the power of cryptocurrency. Wow, pound that like button. Mauricio, your thoughts on this situation?
I mean, I largely agree with Javier. I've seen the Petro. I want to say, so the Petro's had two versions of the white paper. The first iteration of it, actually, there's been material changes between one and the other. And I want to basically tell you a little bit about my research up to now, because in preparation for this, I basically did a lot of digging, trying to essentially get my hands on potentially instance of a Petro node, or figure out which blockchain the Petro was running on, and try to get some visibility on some wallets. So first I'll start with the white paper. So the first white paper was stipulated as an ERC20 token, and it was backed by a finite number of barrels with a specified field as the reserves. The second version of the white paper then went on to say it would be on the NEM blockchain, and that it would be backed by a basket of commodities that the government could choose and replace at any one time, and that you have to basically trust the Venezuelan government. Today, it's very, very hard to basically check or verify anything on the Petro blockchain as a whole. I do see that I have confirmed the same way Javier has, that people have transacted in it, and that you can see some transactions, that you can see the transactions debit and credited in the blockchain. I myself haven't been able to get there, because I think it's very important for us to keep track of the issuance schedule for this, because if this is on an actual blockchain, they're basically shooting themselves in the foot, because now we're going to be able to track every governor, every mayor, every person who actually gets these Petros, corrupt as they may be, which they will be. We're now actually going to have some visibility on that corruption, which is beautiful. And I actually don't think they actually know that this is going to happen, or they're not quite aware that this is actually the case with the blockchain. So to your point, the point that you just made exactly, this is a control tool, and this is in my view, and the view of other Venezuelans, this is a way, and it says it in the white paper, in actual law that decrees the Petro into being. There's some very interesting quotes and points that essentially says that the SUNACRIP, which is the entity that regulates the Petro and the issuance, sits outside the central bank and only has a requirement to collaborate with the central bank to talk about the Petro and the issuance of the Petro. So Maduro has now a way to bypass the central bank to print crypto, to print actually like worthless funds that now don't even have to be printed with actual ink and paper. He can just make it into being with a click, and send it to his wife. So he already started airdropping things. He already started having like these tech shows, tech fairs, which was the reason for my original tweet that you quoted at the beginning, was him walking around in this, call it like consensus, like Venezuelan Petro, trade show. And there were some people who, obviously in Venezuela, there's a lot of hungry entrepreneurs, a lot of comp sci grads, a lot of people that are looking at them, and not a lot of people have the opportunity to get on a plane and reestablish themselves elsewhere. And so they see in this a way to get a grant. They see in this a way to get a angel funding for their business, and they can build this great tech. And given the resources and the options that they have, it's I'm not surprised that you're constantly going to have people that are going to be willing to do this, But yeah, that's. I mean, I'll stop there because we can go about this forever. But that's really kind of my 2 cents.
Well, it's better than the Bolivar. I mean, and he's again, unfortunately, it's working. It's strengthening the regime. If people are getting, they're hungry young entrepreneurs out there. You're not going to do anything with the Bolivar. Why not do this if they're giving it away for free? And there seems like there's opportunity. Wow, that is a very, very interesting situation. I really haven't heard all this yet, so I'm reacting. You can see. Javier, do you have any thoughts on what Mauricio just said? Anything to add to the situation? And I mean, where do you see this ending? Where do you see it going, progressing to?
Well, yes, that was a kind of crypto event with many entrepreneurs of the Venezuelan crypto movement, like they shaking hands with the dictator and receiving credit in Petro, or smiling and giving him a treasure like a gift. That, like, I sent a tweet about that, and Trezor after that published an official statement about that they're not linked with anybody on that crypto event. And this is very weird. We are pushing Bitcoin as an option and talking with people about Bitcoin, about how it could help us as citizens to overcome this authoritarian government, and then they are pushing their own narratives, like crypto will save us, crypto is the new way to liberate our economy, to defeat Trump. They are pushing a crypto narrative that could help us to maintain the power. The ultimate goal of the government is just hold the power and, well, keep us little and control it.
By the way, you sent out, I'm going to send that tweet, it's going to be in the notes section, of Maduro holding a Trezor package. Unbelievable. Yes, you were about to add there, Mauricio.
No, I just got to say, like, to Javier's point, growing up there, and Javier can attest to this, the Venezuelan government's main job, as far as I've been around, the way they've managed to stay in power for so long is confusion. Confuse the people. And to Javier's point, you have companies like ourselves, like Satoshi Venezuela, like, AirTM, there's Coinbase trying to send money to Venezuela. Like, everyone's trying to help Venezuela through Bitcoin and airdrops and all these things. And they're, and the people outside, they're looking at media, they're looking at Twitter, they're like, okay, this is a futuristic technology that has like some benefits for Venezuela. And along comes the government and sequesters that narrative and says, oh yeah, of course, this is what's going to help us. And guess what? We made it better. Here's the Petro. And the people are going to start using the Petro, and the Petro's going to go to crap. And when people are looking at the Petro, and they're going to say, what is this crypto thing? This crypto thing sucks, blah, blah, blah. And the government's going to say, listen, this isn't our fault. Like, we were trying our best. This crypto thing isn't really what it's made out to be. We're just going to wait. We're going to go find the next thing. And people are going to be like, oh, the government tried their hardest. And that's really like what we're up against.
Whoa, that's an interesting scenario, and it works on a lot of people, I guess. Because people keep repeating the same mistakes again and again. And it's not just in Venezuela; it's in Argentina. It's in other countries. Repeat the same. And we're gonna talk about Ecuador, actually. I mean, we can start talking about it in a second. I do want to point out, Javier, you are hosting meetups there. You're hosting Bitcoin meetups down there. So how has that been going?
Yes, I've been working as a journalist, a crypto journalist. Like back in 3 years. In January 2020, I will be working in this space, but like 3 years. So I think that I can help the people to maybe learn a little faster about Bitcoin, maybe to know about Bitcoin, and that's why I'm pushing Bitcoin only meetups to well help the people to investigate, to search about Bitcoin, and that's why I'm doing this
No,
because you know, as
it,
the government
no,
as the
continue.
government has his own cryptocurrency, we can use Bitcoin as a powerful tool to us, you know.
And I bet there's some people that well, maybe you can people can use their Petro to get Bitcoin. It would be unfortunate if someone had Bitcoin and gave it up for a Petro. That's what you're teaching people not to do. But you're it's let me see the name of Satoshi in Venezuela meetup event. I linked to that Twitter account. Now you say it's a Bitcoin only. You're obviously a Bitcoin hardcore guy. Have you seen the Dash people that give out the Dash there? I've heard different things about that. What's your take on that?
Well, Dash has a lot of marketing here. Uh, First, I work as a journalist, so I had to talk directly with them, with many people that work with the marketing of Dash here in Venezuela. I talk with the people in the ground, so they are trying to push the adoption and the Dash use, but they are not educating people about money, about economics. They just doing marketing. And many projects that have received resource money from the DAO, well, they don't end well. So they're talking about corruption, like the people that received the dash from the DAO didn't make their work, or like people are talking like the dash is centralized and they didn't fund projects, and it's a little mess, to be honest.
Okay.
They have tricky numbers, they have um, projects that don't work as expect, they're pushing a narrative like many other shitcoiners are doing here, because Venezuela is a good laboratory, but if you are not in the ground, if you're not working with the people trying to help, the people will not use your currency. You do prefer to use bolivars, because if Dash is too complex or is too difficult to use, I do prefer to pay with bolivars. And this is not the main goal of Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies in this scenario. We're facing hyperinflation. You know, we don't need other money that will lose its value, or we don't need that shit.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
You've actually said what another guest from Venezuela once said. Like, we're trying to save. We're not interested in spending here. We're interested in saving. So if we're going to spend, we're going to spend the horrible boulevard. We're going to get rid. We're going to get rid of the boulevard. Why do we need a better boulevard? It's you're nodding your head up there, Mauricio. When we were talking about Dash, you have something to add.
Well, no, the Dash, I leave Javier speak because I think he has a much better vantage point. I echo a lot of what he said just from what I've been observing. But I've been, I've had to be out of the country for the last 2 years. So I leave it to him to sort of give the better impression of what's happening there now. And I think that's fairly accurate based on everything that I've read. The way I'm nodding my head about is this idea of spending and people with this whole concept of like, oh, Venezuelans just want to be able to like, quickly process a transaction and get a quick confirmation. I'm like, that's to Javier's point exactly. It's like, we don't need another thing we have to spend. Like that thing already, we have to hot potato it. The second we take it, we touch it, we have to get rid of it. And I say this because not to do this as a shameless plug, like the idea, a lot of the idea behind Ledn, which is dollar loans backed by Bitcoin, was because I actually, every time to protect my Bolivares, you would take money out from the bank, you would borrow Bolivares on spot and you would buy dollars. And that's essentially how you would short the Bolivar. You'd take a loan, you would buy dollars, you would wait for time to go by, you would convert back literally a fraction of what you borrowed, and then the loan will be paid off and you could borrow it again. And this idea of borrowing crappy money backed by a hard asset is a brilliant concept. And so to us, where, you know, when we were growing our Bitcoin businesses, it was like selling your Bitcoin for dollars is the worst investment ever long term, because if you just held it, you would have done great. So this concept of borrowing against your hard assets is huge. And this is the kind of products that we're trying to push with Javier, because we're actually one of the main supporters of Satoshi in Venezuela. We love their project, we love what they're doing. And everything that we built was essentially to help people save Bitcoin, not spending. Like, people don't, you know, the main need for people that are in these environments is to save. And that's what Bitcoin does really well.
Yes, I am offended by selling Bitcoin. Pound that like button, everyone. Okay, now we're gonna quickly move away from Venezuela, and we'll get a little political here, because you two guys will have opinions. First of all, I really love hearing news straight from Venezuela. Maybe at the end of the show we can talk about what you guys think about the news that Americans hear about Venezuela. And I mean, we read about it in CoinDesk. Some of this CoinDesk stuff is like fourth-hand knowledge. I don't know where they're getting. I don't know why they just don't get like you guys on the show or interview you guys. But also, what's been going on in South America? We just have what's going on in Ecuador, and we have what's going on in Chile, and we have what's going on in Argentina. These are three separate stories. But can you both of you quickly address those three countries? And I know it's beyond the cryptocurrency type of thing. We'll start with Mauricio.
Yeah, so I'll touch first on Argentina, then we can touch on Chile and Ecuador. I'm not quite familiar with, but Bolivia is making.
Oh, sorry, Bolivia. I just got confused.
No worries. But I am very well. I have been doing a lot of reading, especially recently around Bolivia, and so I'm more than happy to comment, at least from my humble opinion. So as far as Argentina, it's really difficult to bring in a call it right-wing capitalist regime or mandate that has to have fiscal responsibility and has to make some hard decisions. That was always a challenge. Like, everyone knew going into a Macri term after the Kirchner's that it was going to be an uphill battle, and it so was. Macri got his IMF. He tried really hard to basically push his agenda, but then you always have the left wing. What happened was that because it was a very democratic transition in Argentina, the losing party at the time, Cristina Kirchner, was not thrown in jail. Like, her trials and all that stuff lasted forever, so much so that she was able to be a vice president candidate for this new guy after this new term. So it is very hard to push a regime of austerity and fiscal responsibility when you have another party in the back rallying around the country saying, "You're gonna get free money. You're gonna get free money. Just vote for me. You get free money." And that's impossible. It's an impossible thing, because you have to educate people, and you can't educate people in 5 years. And so Argentina on that side is and to me, I see a potential future state in Venezuela, right? Where if you get a right-wing president, then you're gonna have a bunch of guys that are just gonna be like, let's just wait it out, guys. Just wait it out and tell people they get free money. And then in 6 years, we get our shot. And that's really what you see in LATAM, right? Like, you go left, right, left, right, left, right. And then that brings me to, Bolivia. Bolivia is a place where, from what I've been reading, the work Evo Morales did was far better for the people than Chavez himself. The problem with Evo Morales was that, well, he rewrote the Constitution. That's a huge red flag, in my opinion, after I saw Chavez do it. So the guy rewrites the Constitution, gets 2-term limits. Then notwithstanding that, he gets this special exemption to run on a 3rd term, wins that term. And then when people really lost it was when he tried to run again for his 4th term. And people said, no, I don't want you to run for the 4th term. He ran anyway. He won anyway. And then the protests just broke out. and the military in Bolivia had a modicum of independence, and they told the guy, "You're a crook," and he got on a plane and left. That's my interpretation on that. And then Chile, I'm not. Chile puzzles me. I mean, I do understand, but yeah.
Yeah. This is a bigger question here. I've been to Chile. It's run great, very capitalistic. It seems to me that some of the people got a little spoiled there, and they want free stuff. And now they're jealous of some people that are successful. But lots of people are pretty successful there. I mean, when I was there, and again, it was a year ago exactly, the college kids, they're always angry about everything. They got communist signs up all over the place. But there are a lot of Bitcoiners who are like cheering this on. I don't think anyone should be cheering this on. They want to take away people's wealth. And you guys have seen what happened. Okay, yeah, please. Yeah.
Do not cheer on what's happening in Chile. I mean, I mind you, I want to caveat that by saying I'm not Chilean. I didn't grow up in Chile, and I don't want this to be me dismissing potential issues that may be actually occurring in Chile, because I'm sure no government is perfect, and there are sectors of society that are not probably getting the best. Having said that, I think Chile should have taken a page from all the learning lessons in every other country in the continent, where every single one of us failed. Every single one of us failed. Even Venezuela, with the largest oil reserves and oil reserve in the world, and they're still asking for it. And it's just, to me, I mean, I get it. You might want to improve pensions a little bit. You might want to improve, transportation here and there. But the cost is way too high, if you ask, in my opinion. Like, the cost of asking for that kind of government is just way too high. And to go that violence, because that's the thing, right? Like, I hate to say this, but like, when it goes between left and right and things get radical left and radical right, the radical right just gets on a plane and leaves because they work really hard, and generally speaking, they have some money. The radical left is like, we'll die on this hill, and they'll go out and they'll throw things and they'll get violent, and it'll be very hard, right? So, I mean, maybe I'm blanket stating too much, so I'll take back a second.
No, it's a good, I like this analysis. Javier, what are your thoughts? Bitcoiners shouldn't be cheering on what's going on in Chile. What's your take on those three countries, if any?
Well, as a reporter, I have many connections, and I know Chilean peoples that said that the people is maybe a little tired, maybe a little upset about the government issues, because they are facing very high life cost. Like, you could work as as a bastard as me, but you don't get enough money to pay for your things. And people, between the two narrative about maybe I can give you free stuff or you have to work harder, maybe are choosing to take the free stuff and maybe think a little about that kind of way to make the country go. And the rage people are really upset because the old people in Chile are kind of dying because they have a little low pay, or the young people that work with 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 a monthly paycheck didn't have enough money to pay. And if you have this narrative about I will give you free money, will you free stuff, it's like the way that Chavez gets the power here, no? Like, we'll keep things to the poor people and help the poorest. And and I can talk about the thing that the people in Chile are thinking about their situation, because it's a particular context. They have their historical problems. They have a different approach as we do, but we're, yeah, like, worried because we have friends, we have family. My girlfriend is from Her parents are from Chile. Her family is there, and many of my friends have migrated to Chile. So we're more concerned than happy because people are turning up. And Bolivia and other countries, I think that, well, you can hold the power forever. Yeah, like we are facing the two different governments of the same Chavismo, but in Bolivia, Evo can simply do the same thing to keep going and going and going and winning, and the people just can have you forever as a king, and they have a stronger institution that are more separated, like the military could help the other people. And well, and in Argentina, well, every news that I read about Argentina makes me feeling home. like it, like when you read news and you see, and I've talked with other Venezuelans that are there, that they say that, geez, this seems like 5 years ago in Venezuela when the prices begin to skyrocket, but it's the many beginning, and with the new adventure of the case could be a little worse. So
I will say this: you both said that these leaders try to gain power by offering free stuff. Hey, it's the same thing that happens in Canada and the United States. Also, that's that's what's going on in politics too. They're offering all sorts of free stuff. I also want to point out that when I was in Santiago and I would go to the big market they had there were quite a few stands that had Venezuelan flags on them of guys who used to live in Venezuela, and they got out of there. They wanted to live in a freer, in a capitalistic society. So it is, I can see why your connections in Chile would be disturbed by the situation going on there, because they came to Chile to get away from such things, to live a freer life.
So I just want to make a quick comment. My mom makes a joke that says that moving countries in Latam trying to escape communism is like moving rooms in the Titanic trying to escape sinking.
I found that light, but that's it's unfortunate. I was always a believer that it would not. Well, I thought from what I knew that it couldn't happen in Chile, and it hasn't happened in Chile. But they had millions of people just in the street. We'll see how that progresses. All right, so let's move. A lot of people wanted to hear about we've got Latin American guys here, so we had to talk about that. So let's move on to your what you're doing up there in Toronto, Mauricio. And we're going to get cut off in a second, but don't worry, we'll continue. Yeah. But so yeah, what is this? Tell us about Ledn, and I'll give you my thoughts and everything. And you and Javier, you could tell us too.
Yeah, sure. So when I came, I got into Bitcoin in Venezuela. When I learned about Bitcoin as a product of the Venezuelan situation. My brother punctually was graduating university. He was looking to start up a business, but no business was making any sense. And he pitched me this idea of mining Bitcoin. And this was back in 2014. That's the first time I ever got exposed to Bitcoin. And so when I learned about it and I saw how Venezuelans were using it and how mining was helping a ton of people earn income, and a lot of people relocate to countries like Chile and Argentina and Venezuela, I thought I immediately fell in love with what the concept was. And my goal was really the dream was always to build up a bigger company, a bigger platform that could help people save in Bitcoin. From my experiences in Bitcoin businesses, I always had a really challenging time growing my businesses without selling my Bitcoin. It was very hard to essentially do anything that would require growing or investing without having to sell your Bitcoin. So to me, the biggest pain point that I saw was people selling their Bitcoin because they had an immediate short-term need or whatever. So it was very difficult to essentially, once you acquired the Bitcoin and you wanted to keep growing your business or keep getting more Bitcoin, it was very difficult for you not to have to sell them, right? Or to get liquidity with the Bitcoin. Nobody was doing it. When I was living in Canada at the time, half in Canada, half in Venezuela. I started mining in Venezuela basically very early in 2015. And then when I saw people go through the same problem as they were trying to get more miners, they would send the Bitcoins to Bitmain. Bitcoin would rally tremendously. They would lose out on the gains. They were very frustrated. When the machines arrived, the difficulty was very high. And so this kept happening in not just mining, but any Bitcoin businesses. And when I was in Canada, I was looking at it and I was trying to set up mines here in Canada. And I was going around like banks and institutions that would give you liquidity, trying to get a loan backed by my Bitcoin. And I couldn't get anyone to do it. And the other companies that I knew that were doing this were using tokens and had done ICOs. And so to me, I was like, okay, I come from structured finance. I know regulators, and I think you have to really respect them, especially if you're gonna have a financing business. So we're gonna try to make a compliant, fully above board, transparent lending company that can essentially have a different, talk to institutions, get really cheap dollars, and lend them to people so that they don't have to sell their Bitcoins. And because Bitcoin is the same in Venezuela as in Canada, as in Colombia, we'll be able to standardize the levels of rates and services that we offer. And that was really our first product, which was our sort of, our main product, which is Bitcoin-backed loans. And that's what we do today. We worked very hard once we launched in Canada to make the product available in Venezuela and Colombia and the other countries where I knew it could have a huge impact. And we launched that in June of this year. And then since then, we've essentially been working on letting people know that we exist, and people have been using our services, which has been really amazing. So actually, Javier has actually chatted to some of them. But yeah, people benefit. We get some really great stories about people what use their funds for. But yeah, and then from there, we built a Bitcoin savings account, which gives people interest in their Bitcoin if they don't have a loan, if they don't need liquidity or they need to access a loan. And then recently, we just launched B2X, which is a product that people use to get more Bitcoin. So that's our suite of services. And really our mission is to just help people save in Bitcoin.
Now there's all sorts of, I would think there's all sorts of regulation in Canada. Was it hard to set this up there? I mean, it seems like you're doing some complex things.
Yeah, so Canada, the regulator body here is called FINTRAC. FINTRAC is coming up with a full set of legislations, which requires companies to register as money service businesses. We have been participants in the consultations from FINTRAC to draft this legislation, so we're very much involved. We want this to happen. We've had some bad instances here in Canada of companies that weren't really doing things the right way. And because of that, they just created a taint on the name. So we as an industry are really pushing to get a framework that we can all work with. And frankly speaking, as a company that has to deal with institutions don't like gray. They like black and white. So you need to have a framework that allows companies like us to keep getting cheaper funds from larger parties and make it available to Bitcoiners worldwide.
Okay, now you said there are people in Venezuela that have done business with you then?
Yes.
All right, so they have the Bitcoin and you give them a loan?
Yes.
And what's the loan denominated in? What type of...
It's in dollars. So the loan is denominated in dollars. They can choose to receive it in the funds that they wish. We also work with DAI for disbursements because some people don't have US dollar bank accounts.
Yeah.
And they want to get stable coins. So that was really the reason we started doing stablecoin disbursements with DAI. And that's people use the funds to, generally speaking, pay down higher cost debt, reinvest in their businesses. Starting new businesses is a big one, and diversifying. So some people have a lot of Bitcoin and they just want to buy another asset but not sell it.
So these guys, they have some Bitcoin and then they let you guys control the Bitcoin and they get dollars for it.
Yes, and we offer real-time proof of reserves on our loans. That's very important because we're one of the only companies that does that in the world, which is that when you send a Bitcoin to us as collateral for a loan, it sits on a cold vault address that you can see at all times and you can ping at all times. So it is with us in our custody, but you can check that it's there, that we're not moving it, that we're not doing anything with it. And then when you pay the loan back, you get the exact same UTXOs.
Yeah, so there definitely is demand for such all sorts of people are coming up with ideas like this. As everyone knows, I'm not, I say control your own private key, hold your Bitcoin. That's what I do. But hey, I've got guests on the show that say, that's the business that he runs. So he's, you gave, are Americans, can you do business with Americans?
Yeah, we're live in 4 U.S. states. We've had, so depending on the states, the thresholds are different in which we can operate based on regulations. But yeah, we do have U.S. clients. We have clients in Mexico. We have clients in Argentina, Colombia. We have some European countries as well. Canada, obviously, it's our biggest market. But yeah, it's been growing quite fast in the places that we are allowed to essentially service and promote. It's been doing really well.
Well, I give you're definitely in motion. You're satisfying demand of certain types of clients. It's not, I'm not that type of a Bitcoin holder, but what can I say? People are going to do what they're going to do. You're going to provide the service for them. So since Javier, so what do you think about all this? Not loaning out your Bitcoin. I mean, it's such a precious commodity for someone in Venezuela because there is trust involved. Like, I'm trusting this dude in Canada to give me my Bitcoin back. And I know what you just said. You've got it listed out there publicly that they can check. It's that proof of reserves, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, still, it is third-party risk, and I guess there are just some people that need the dollar flow. So I mean, Javier, what's your take on it?
Well, I really know Mauricio back when I was working with Crypto Noticias, and I interviewed him. I interviewed him because the Defi thing, DeFi,
Yeah.
the decentralized finance in Ethereum. And he was working on a project of DeFi on Bitcoin. So I have to talk with the man. I contacted him, and in our first conversation, he described this service, and I have the same concern that you, Adam, had right now. I thought, like, I don't want to give anybody my keys, nor even my mommy. So why I will trust in Mauricio, even if I think he's a cool guy, why to choose to work with him in a service like that? Well, in Venezuela, as you know, you can use bolivars, you can use dollars, you can use pesos, you can use Bitcoin. So you save a little amount of Bitcoin, but if you need to save, you can use dollars too. So you prefer to expend your bolivars first. If you are saving in Bitcoins, you must burn some sats to get bolivars, and the more sats you burn, the more you lost, because bolivar, every time you send bolivar, you sell Bitcoin for bolivars, you are losing money. Like, you are not using Bitcoin to save. So this is where I think that service as Ledn could work to us. Like, I don't want to spend the whole Bitcoin that I have, but I really need to get some bolivars that I can get exchanging the DAI for bolivars, or maybe selling the dollars, and I can hold more sats. No, don't need to sell all them. That's the main thing that I talked with Mauricio back then, and recently I was talking with some clients of Ledn, some user of the service. Like, I talked with him, he described how they're working with BitGo in this security problem. They're working in a high level custody level, and the people that use their services are happy with this. Like, I'm leaving my keys to Ledn, and I'm leaving them the keys issues today, but they are giving the liquidity I may need, and they're also working with a high-profile security provider. So it's like you can choose to sell your Bitcoins by your way, or you can choose to use this kind of financial service, this kind of Defi on Bitcoin to keep a little more sats. I think that it's a question of the approach of any of us. Like, I don't really want to give my keys, but if I need liquidity and I don't like to sell off all my Bitcoin, I can use this kind of service.
Yeah, now this you brought up DeFi, and I'm going to ask Mauricio. I got like a three-part question, or three different questions for you. DeFi is like the big buzzword of the day, so I want to hear your take on that. You're clearly part of that ecosystem. What is this new product you just said? B2X? What's it called? BX? Something you said?
Yeah. So B2X is just a way of allowing people. A lot of people were using our Bitcoin-backed loans to buy more Bitcoin. And what this does, so what was happening is they have a Bitcoin, they send it to us, we lend at 50% loan to value. So they gave us one Bitcoin, we lend them, call it half a Bitcoin in dollars. They bought half a Bitcoin in dollars, they deposit half a Bitcoin, then they take a quarter of a Bitcoin in dollars and they buy a quarter of a Bitcoin, and then they keep doing this. So what this B2X service does is that if you have one Bitcoin and the purpose of your loan is to buy more Bitcoin, we'll give you the max amount, which is so if you deposit one Bitcoin, we can loan you an equal amount to purchase an additional Bitcoin and purchase it on the spot. So basically you end up with double the Bitcoins that you deposited with us and a loan for the newly purchased one. And so that all gets locked up in custody and you have twice as much Bitcoin.
Where are you guys coming up with this money to lend out, and how are you guys making money on your end? This is
yeah. So our business is, like I mentioned earlier, the way we make money is we convince institutions to lend us dollars at a rate that we then relend to our clients, and we take a spread. So our business is to get bigger and bigger institutions that have longer investment horizons and lower cost of capital. So we just recently announced a deal with Colchis Capital. They're one of the largest financing companies out of San Francisco. They've backed PayPal. They've backed Square Payments. So they're a very large company. That's really the kind of parties that we work with to access the dollars. And we essentially structure our custody and everything with them to show them that the dollars they're giving us are protected by the Bitcoins that are placed as collateral. And it's essentially we marry institutions. So we try to bring institutional capital and tools and make it so that retail Bitcoiners can use these tools to grow their businesses.
Okay. Now, what's your overall take on all this DeFi hype?
So the way I see DeFi, and I said this on Javier's interview way back, was, to me what DeFi is a modern take on P2P lending and P2P essentially transactions. The issue with that, if you look at traditional finance today, is that P2P has a very hard time scaling because you have to have a coincidence of wants on both sides, and the demands. It's just very tricky. Customer experience is very spotty. You'll have to marry the guys that want to borrow at these rates with the guys that want to lend at these rates, and there's no central coordinator. So if you, for example, let's just look at some numbers. If you look at like the whole DeFi, like all of the volumes on DeFi today, which I have to double check, but I think it was somewhere around the neighborhood of $620 million, right? That's been what's been volumes through DeFi. If you compare that with a company, and that's lending, right? That's lending in the crypto space from one way or another, right? If you compare that with, for example, the volumes that a company like Genesis Capital has, so Genesis is the largest central market maker in the Bitcoin industry. They have originated $2.3 billion in loans in 18 months. So that's one company that is 4 times all of DeFi. And there's several Genesises out there. So I guess all I'm trying to say is that the incentives, I believe, are better aligned in the central structure as far as lending goes, because you can coordinate more capital from larger regulated parties and disperse that to your clients. With DeFi, you have to aggregate a ton of supply and you have to aggregate a ton of demand, and that's where you have a hard time scaling. So as far as enabling, I want to say exotic or innovative transactions, DeFi has a place because it's very experimental. It's not as regulatory constrained. However, as far as scaling, it has a huge challenge. And I think the services that do end up scaling in financial services are the ones that can be centralized and talk to regulators and comply and increasingly get larger and larger parties to work with.
Right. So when we're talking DeFi, also a lot of people out there are hyping it as the way that it's going to save Ethereum. Basically, this is going to take Ethereum to the next level. Do you have thoughts on that aspect? I mean, we've been chalking just Bitcoin here so far, but you've got to have your hands in Ethereum here too a little bit. I mean, do you only deal in loans that deal with Bitcoin? Is there collateral in Ethereum also, or do you take
no.
Okay, only Bitcoin?
We're a Bitcoin-only company. The only other asset that we use and touch is our disbursements and DAI. And I'm more than happy to chat on Ethereum and stablecoins in general as to why we chose DAI. But I think it's important for people to know we are the only today Bitcoin-only lending company still, and we've been so since day one. So we encourage people to save in Bitcoin, and we are in the business of solving problems for our users. So when our users were coming to us saying, we're having a hard time getting dollars, I need a stable coin, we went out and surveyed the stable coins that we could work with. And, so just to touch on Ethereum briefly, what the DAI obviously is a company that works with a set of smart contracts and has a very sophisticated, I want to say, way of arranging their incentives to keep their parity. I don't know enough about, I mean, I'm not an expert in Ethereum and I'm not an expert in DAI. What I can say is when we surveyed the market for stablecoins, I have a feeling that there's a bit of this drunk in their own success situation happening in stablecoins today, similar to what was happening in ICOs back then, which is that ICOs were this way that you could get securities issued without going through securities regulator. And that didn't work. I have a feeling that there's a lot of companies out there trying to create unstoppable dollars by putting these dollars in a bank account. And so I think this concept of unstoppable dollars works as long as the OFAC and the Treasury don't really care where your dollars are. But the second that they start checking, your argument for an unstoppable dollar starts losing a lot of power, because when OFAC can just go to your bank where all your funds are and say, I want to see an audit where every single token is held, and how can you prove that that token is not in North Korea? So I think that there's going to be some issues with stable coins, right? Especially when they get big. And I think DAI is the only one that's kind of at least thought this through, as far as you can say a lot of things about Ethereum, but a regulator can't just go and seize up all the smart contracts, at least as far as I know right now. They may be, but we do like this concept that they're not tied to dollars somewhere that are easily, easy to put their hands on.
All right. Javier, you're a Bitcoin maximalist, basically, I'd say. So what's your take on Ethereum saving the world? Is there going to be a resurgence because of DeFi?
I don't think that DeFi on Ethereum will be a bankless solution, the new way that we in the third or the seventh world, we will use the financial services. And I think that Ethereum itself is facing big issues that they should solve to have this all big DeFi stuff running for enough time to help people. So I think that maybe the DeFi concept is just a way to, again, meet Bitcoin, keep in touch with Bitcoin, or maybe find ways to use Bitcoin in this DeFi way. But Ethereum itself, I don't know. Like they were a world computer. It first was gas, then it now is money. They have this ETH 2.0. They have many other problems besides DeFi problems.
Yeah.
So that people will use their services. People will use those platforms because the curiosity, or maybe their developers, or like an experiment. But no, this is not a solution. That's why I don't talk about service like, I don't know, Uniswap or things like that. And in Venezuela, we need powerful tools that could work in this kind of weird contest. And I don't think like Ethereum is a good way to help the people, and that's why I don't encourage people to use DeFi products.
Now, I want to go stick with you, Javier, because before the show, we were DMing, and you mentioned the ethos of Bitcoin as if some people almost see it as like a religion, and it is a connecting force between people throughout the entire world that has actually gotten a lot of people interested in your situation in Venezuela. You wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Yes, like I'm a philosopher. I'm not a journalist. I'm not an economist. I'm not a developer. When I was in the university, I studied philosophy, so that's my main approach to Bitcoin. So that's why the ethos of Bitcoin is the main thing that make me a Bitcoiner. Like, we are talking by the internet with people like I don't really know, like I don't really care who they are, but we share this vision that Bitcoin is a really powerful tool for the citizens of the world, and we are in each of our countries, in each of our contests, working and searching and talking about Bitcoin with other people, because we think that this movement, this currency, this digital gold, I don't know how do you want to name it, but we think like Bitcoin could help each of us in each of our contests. And this main idea, this ethos like we share in common, is the the way that I think we can help more people to use or to experiment with Bitcoin. Like, is crypto, is Nakamoto, is many other things, but it's a social movement. Like, we don't need to be in the same place. We don't need to talk the same language. See, I, I'm a genius in Spanish, but my English is broke. So, but I don't really have to talk perfect English, because we share a common ground. Like, we can share our ideas on how it is impacting us, or how it could lead us to a brighter future. And there are other people like have this idea on a deeper wave, like they're Gigi, this man of Twitter.
Yeah.
Like, he's the more religious guy that I know on Twitter. And I don't really know their Gigi, but I follow him and I read his tweets, and I feel those revelations as mine. Like, I feel Bitcoin as a religion too, but not in a faithful way. I think more in a relegare from the Latin, more in a way of unite the people, reunite us in between, or around an big idea that is Bitcoin. So we have a big movement around the world happening, and we don't need to be the same people, we don't need to be the same country, we simply live in this religion movement.
Well, this is deep Bitcoin philosophy. I thank you for sharing all of that there, because there are a lot of people that see it, and it is definitely, they see it that way. It is definitely a connecting force, no matter what your language is, no matter where you are. There is something that all these guys on Twitter or wherever, something connecting us all together, and it can be expressed in many different ways. So I thank you for your philosophical take on Bitcoin there. And you were talking about Gigi, right? Gigi on Twitter. Yeah. That dude's, he's been on the show before. All right. Oh my God, hang on. All right, good. You're still there. All right, Mauricio, we're getting toward the end here. What is up with the Toronto Bitcoin scene? Do you have anything to share about that?
Yeah, well, we just had a second Bitcoin Fixes Everything meetup last night, which is ourselves and CoinKite, and Rodolfo and VK. We had Peter Todd join us. We had a bunch of people show up, so it was very interesting. It's getting bigger and bigger every month. So we Rodolfo kind of spearheaded that, and when he reached out, and we were like, of course, like, let's do it. The scene is growing. I mean, it's a scene that every year gets bigger, gets more exciting. We had I don't know if you've been following, but 3iQ just got their first they got a very important approval from the Canadian regulator to launch a Bitcoin fund in the Canadian TSX.
Yes.
Which has gotten people here very excited. There's also the regulation that's coming in June next year, so people are working towards that. Obviously, things like Einstein don't leave a good taste in anyone's mouth, but it is a community that's coming. These events bring a community closer and closer together. And as we're working towards this draft or this legislation that's finally going to get passed next year, I think it's going to really allow companies to flourish. Not necessarily because it will create some headwinds on some of the companies that aren't preparing for it, but those who are going to be allowed to flourish, because again, I think what's missing right now is a framework, and I think the community is doing a great job at letting everyone in the country, I guess, know how important this is, and our legislators seem to be listening. So the grassroots stuff keeps growing. We're getting some complementary tailwinds from regulators. So I just think this community is only going to keep getting bigger and better.
All right, Javier, your concluding thoughts, Javier, and maybe tell us, besides your guys' feeds, your Twitter feeds, where are some good places to get news out of what's really going on in Venezuela with Bitcoin? Because we hear so many different things.
Well, I do recommend people to read cryptonoticias.com. That is one of the biggest media outlets in Spanish. I work as a contributor with them, and you can read Cointelegraph en Español. That is the Cointelegraph Spanish version that have many writers that are here in Venezuela. We are a group of, I think, like 5 Venezuelan writers working from them. And you should follow us on Twitter, because there are no many good source of information. Like, you will find news in big newspapers like El Nacional or El Universal, but they don't have an expertise on cryptocurrencies or Bitcoin, and their approach isn't quite qualified. I think that if you want to read the most accurate information about Venezuela, the best way is to follow people like Mauricio, people like Diana Aguilar, that her handle is Crypto Diana, like Jose Herrera. I think that we can share with you a
Yes.
little list of
Yes.
people that you can recommend to follow, because beside Crypto Noticias or other media outlets, there is no more much, I think, free speech or free of communication, like many of the biggest media outlets in the country have facing problems to publish, and information is a kind of goal here. So the better way to get it is to follow the ones who is taking this work.
Well, you guys, please, after the show, well, send me your links. Everybody check out the links below. All their links that they send me are going to be there. So thank you very much, Javier. Mauricio, you're going to get the final word today. What are your closing thoughts? Anything you wanted to add? Something that got left out? A story you wanted to mention? To talk about the business? Anything?
The Petro is everything Bitcoin stands against, and I just think that we should take a look and just try our best as we can to let the Venezuelan people know what's going on and how they can protect themselves. And I think that's what we're all working to do. So I think it's important for us to keep an eye out, because there's some really bad people trying to take everything that we built as far as tech and using it for bad reasons.
Wow. All right, everybody. Pound that like button for this show. It was a very special Venezuelan, Latin American edition. You got to hear all sorts of world news that you don't hear anywhere else in the space. That's what I love to bring you. The best guest in the space, on the ground, international type of stuff. We do this Week in Bitcoin show every single Friday. Every day of the week, I do a new show, the One Bitcoin Show. Saturday is the Beyond Bitcoin show. So keep on tuning in, people. My elite friends out there. I am Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, Disrupt Meister. Remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video, share this video, check out the links below. Thanks again, guys, for being on the show. Check out their very important links below. Shabbat Shalom. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye. See ya.